Hey there, friends. I wanted to create a new opening to this awakening story video that I posted over a year ago. And I was going through a lot in my life. I was at a place where I felt like a lot of my personal integrity was just kind of under attack in a lot of my personal relationships. And it was a real time of deep introspection and really realizing what was true and having the courage within myself to just say, you know what, this is what I have experienced as a human, and I know where I'm sincere, and I'm just gonna share it. And so that's what this story is. This is really a very tender, very deep sharing of my spiritual experiences, many of them over the past decade or more. And I find that these kind of stories are so important to share because it's more than just giving a testimony like at a church or at a temple. It's really talking about what it feels like to have a spiritual connection to the divine that is undeniable, something that feels truer than true. And I just wanted to share it with you, and in hopes of hearing other people's stories as well. So enjoy my awakening story. It's a little over an hour, so settle right in or just listen to a little bit of it. But I think you'll get to know me a little bit more. You get to know where my heart really is at, and also how incredible the divine is, and how every single day is just a miracle. Just a miracle, you guys, and how we are carried every single step of the way, every single moment of our life. And just when we have the evidence of it, the knowing of it, it's so incredible, and it fills me with so much gratitude. So enjoy my awakening story, and lots of love to you and yours. Hello, friends. Today, I want to share a story with you that I have never shared before in its entirety to anybody. And it's about my awakening journey. It's been 10 years now, and I feel this tremendous calling in my heart that now is the time to share. And I'd like to set the tone for it with a couple of words from an incredible human named Ashmi Patella. And here we go. The awakening journey is not about the woke. It is a journey for all of humanity as we shift together as one. Awakening is not about what you know or don't know. It is about the very human dance between fear and trust, control and freedom, and separation and unity. It is about us remembering to come back to the heart. It is not about being better than or excluding others. Awakening is about all of humanity because it affects all, it requires all. Every single person is being pushed to face themselves and look deeper, whether they know it or not. Every single system out there is also being shaken from the core. The global awakening is a story of humanity. It does not matter who knows it or not. It is happening now, through all, for all. And I'd like to add that I think this is the greatest story we've ever told. And reading these words and other words from Ashmi and seeing so many other people give voice to their experiences and to their intuition and their inner knowing has propelled me, has held space for me to now step in and do the same right now. Okay, so here we go. Here is my story of awakening, and I will start from the beginning. It's a really good place to start. So sit back, and thanks for being right here on the journey with me. When I was a child, I was really not brought up in any sort of belief system. My grandparents were very Catholic, and I would attend Catholic Mass with them. My grandma did a layperson's baptism of me over her kitchen sink. My dad caught her doing it. So I was baptized over the green beans by my grandma. And growing up, my father was a very, very strict intellectual scientist, very much on that path, on that way of looking at the world. And neither of my parents taught me any sort of religion. And I was one of those people that used to think that this idea that we were all destined by God was a joke. I really was agnostic, I guess you could say. I didn't really know, and I didn't really care. I really wasn't seeking anything. I was just happy living my life as a child and as an adolescent until I was diagnosed with childhood cancer at the age of 12. And I went through a year of chemotherapy. I went through a summer of radiation. I had Ewing sarcoma. It was a localized tumor, and I discovered it. And in the words of my friend who was watching me on this very fated day, my best friend growing up named Erica, we were on a school ski trip, and I was behind a snowboarder. And for those of you that know me, I was not very coordinated to begin with, but the snowboarder tripped me and I tumbled down this mountain, and my friend Erica at the bottom of the mountain saw me tumble down, and she said to me afterwards that there was this massive light, almost blinding, behind me as I was falling that day. And I came home with a split lip, and I was having all this nerve pain in my leg. And my dad's a physical therapist, and he kept, checking for clinical symptoms and doing my deep tendon reflex and all these things. And he persisted with our pediatrician because I was having this nerve pain for over a month. Things weren't getting better. He persisted for me to get an MRI. And we got an MRI, and they found this mass, had it biopsied. Sure enough, I had this rare type of bone cancer. So I began chemotherapy, and my grandma would call me. She would tell me all the time that, she had this prayer circle in her church that was praying for me. And I was like, oh, that's really nice. Thanks, Grandma. Not really, it didn't really mean anything to me. It was just, oh, that's just her way of feeling like she's being helpful. Truly, that's how I thought at the time. And during my treatment, my grandma also gave me this medal to pray on, and it was Saint Peregrine. He's the patron saint of cancer patients in the Catholic tradition. And I would say the little prayer, and I would hold the little medal, and I would fall asleep at night. And it's funny, when I was going through my treatment, I would just tell my parents particularly, I'm fine, nothing's wrong, I'm gonna be okay. And I just had that feeling and that attitude. I didn't know why, I just did. You can call it youthful resilience, but that's just really how I felt. And during church, one Sunday, we're visiting my grandparents, and I'm sitting in church, and I feel this hot, very, very hot sensation up my leg and in my lower back, which is where my tumor was, is in my sacrum. And the residual nerve pain that I had just stopped. And I told my mom right then and there, I said, Mom, something's happening in my body. This is, and my pain is stopping. And she's like, really? Okay, didn't think anything of it. I had my next round of scans a couple weeks later. My tumor was gone. The doctors really couldn't explain it other than, oh, the chemo's working. Okay. And this next part, I didn't even remember that I said this to my mother, but she told me after the fact in my early 20s and said how very real this little experience was for her. I was sitting on the couch with my mother, and this was before everything that happened in the church pew and the tumor being gone. It was actually right before that. And she was crying on the couch, just having a moment. And I looked at her, and like I said, like Ashley, like myself with a small s does not remember this, but myself with a capital S was speaking through me. My mom told me this later on. I looked at my mom directly in the eyes, and I said with the most sincerity, Mom, I'm gonna be fine. You don't need to worry. I'm here to do something important on this planet. What kind of 12-year-old says that? I don't know. And she believed me. She actually believed me, and she stopped crying. All right, so that's the cancer journey. That was really my only practical experience with divine grace before I reached my my mid-20s. So I went to school. My undergrad was for musical theater and directing. I had done theater since I was 5 years old. It was kind of like, this is all I want to do. I went to Point Park University. I loved it. I had a tremendous experience there. It was like an artist's dream to go there, and I had amazing teachers and amazing experiences, and I got to travel. I traveled Europe, and I studied abroad in London. And then when I graduated, I had a showcase through Point Park in Los Angeles. I got an agent from that, and I said, okay, the other things that I was intending on doing, I had a whole different path planned out for myself, but I ended up choosing Los Angeles and going out there and being like, hey, why not? And so I moved to LA. I knew no one. I knew nothing about the film industry. I knew how to be a good theater artist and a director and a creator and a storyteller and a facilitator of these creative experiences for myself and for others, but I didn't have much real life application, and it was much of a culture shock for me, and that's a whole nother video, the whole life in Los Angeles. But went there, and for a number of years, I'm just, I'm hustling. I'm like being an actor in Los Angeles. And I was really blessed. I, got a commercial agent. I booked a couple of commercials. I was able to make a living. I had a great time being a theater director for different things. I did some stand-up workshops. I was in a burlesque troupe. I basically was like, I'm gonna do everything that scares me, and I'm gonna just try it all. That was kind of my attitude, very, very common for our early 20s, I think. So I had that life, and then when I was 24, after being there for almost 4 years, I was living with my boyfriend at the time, and he had a friend who said, hey, there's this kind of like a self-help spiritual teacher He does classes in a couple of people's homes here in LA. Do you wanna just come for fun? And I'm like, okay, sure, new experience. And I go and I listen to this teacher speak in what would become one of my best friend's homes. And I had an experience that I will never forget. It completely changed my world. And it was a very physical experience in the sense of I felt this divine grace. It was like, I want to give words to this because I feel like these are the kinds of things that we don't really talk about with people. For me, it was a very physical experience. I just felt like this wash of energy, like this heat, like burning me up and churning me up inside. And it felt exhilarating and it felt deeply uncomfortable at the same time. And I felt this fire in my chest, and that didn't stop for like 6 months. And I ended up basically experiencing what felt so radical at the time. It was like a 180 in my life. And this grace just kept pouring down on me, and I was learning practices about how to connect to God and the Divine Mother as well, and having these experiences with God. And I was like, okay, I can't deny this. I really can't. This is like so crazy. It felt at times I would lay on my bed at night and the energy would just be ripping through my body. And I'm not kidding. It felt like a birthing experience. I had no idea what giving birth was like, but it was like I was like deep breathing, and I had to and this was for hours, and it felt like something was just like moving through me. And it was grace. It didn't feel bad at all. It felt like this love, just love and peace and fire all at once. And I started experiencing the unseen. I started seeing energy in me and around me. I experienced interacting with things that were nefarious, that were entities and things like that. And I could see them working in and around people, and it was just bananas. And I was trying to explain these things to my parents. Oh God, poor Michael and Cindy in little old Toledo, Ohio, and they were deeply concerned for my well-being. You know what I mean? They thought I had joined a cult or something. And no, I was just having this experience. And I started doing practice. I started doing japa mantra. I learned how to connect to Jesus Christ. I learned how to open my heart. I learned how to feel emotions, energy and motion in my body. I learned practices for healing these things. I learned direct transformation, which was putting your attention on a feeling that you feel in your body and merging with it with the power of your attention. And I was under the guidance of my teacher, who to this day wants to remain anonymous. But he had a very small nonprofit called Adventures in Consciousness, and he had a handful of people that were working with him. And that's coming. I'm gonna flesh that out here in a little bit, but yeah. So this went on for like 6 months. That was like super intense, and everything in my life was changing, and I didn't like the same things that I liked before, and it completely separated people out of my life. It ended my relationship with my boyfriend. My friends who I had had in college, I tried to explain these things to them, and I had wonderful friends. I mean, I had such a wonderful, close group of friends in college, and they really didn't get it. And I had to sit with that and realize, okay, these people just are not a part of my journey right now. And I made the decision to Basically take a huge step back from acting and the whole life that I had created around myself and started working on myself. And I was able to do this because I had booked a couple of national commercials and I could just literally, I was just getting checks in the mail. It was like, okay, here you go. Here's your time and your space to do these things. And I just kept practicing. So I decide to move out. I moved to a different apartment. More of the same continues. I'm learning more practices. I'm being, I would say in a way, initiated into different traditions. I was learning practices from Buddhism. I was learning practices from Hinduism. I was learning practices, more ancient practices from early Christianity. It was a cosmic opening of my heart. I would say it was the honeymoon phase of feeling God's grace. Okay, so I go home on a flight. All right, I go home on a flight back to Ohio, and I end up sitting next to this guy, and I recognize he's wearing a St. Peregrine medal around his neck. I think at this point I was almost 25, and I end up having this conversation with him, and something happened to me in that moment where I experienced intuition for the first time. And what happened was there was this, it was like a very concrete example of intuition. I had been following, I felt like before that point, I had just been like carried, like like a tidal wave of grace was carrying me through everything. And now things had kind of like settled down, the dust had settled. And now I was like, okay, I'm just starting to do the practice. I'm starting to change the way that I live my life. And I was on this plane ride and I'm talking to this guy, and we end our conversation. And after that conversation, I sat there and I felt this knowing in my heart that Saint Peregrine, and I felt all this love to come to me. And I started to cry on the airplane. It was this deep gratitude, this profound, deep gratitude inside of knowing that he had been my intercessor with Christ in helping heal me of my cancer. And I knew it. I just knew it in every cell of my being. And it blew my mind. Okay, so again, my parents are very concerned. I go home. I was still kind of in this honeymoon phase and trying to tell everybody everything that I was learning. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, they're going to embrace this. This is so amazing. This can change the world. I can't even see the world anymore the way that I used to. Everyone needs to know these things. And it was just, I was wide open and scared the shit out of my family. And again, more separation happened. I ended up not really talking with my dad for a while. I ended up having a huge kind of rift with people in my family for a while. And the only person I really let in, and still only occasionally, was my mom. She was just always there and was just always willing to listen. She's an incredible human, by the way. I'm deeply blessed to have her as my mom. And so I realized, okay, I am choosing this. I know this seems nuts to people in my life, but this is where my heart is taking me. And so I moved out of Los Angeles. I moved into the house where my teacher lived in Ventura with he and his partner. And basically, I became like a modern ascetic. I was there for teachings and living in space to do my practice in exchange for taking care of them. And they're both in their 70s, and helping them maintain their house and all kinds of things. And my family didn't get it. And during that time, I spent almost 5 years or 4 years. During that time, I would say in a nutshell, I experienced a cosmic Google of spiritual traditions and had tremendous experience in learning how to observe my mind, advanced Mahamudra practice. If you're familiar with that term, I was shown, experienced through my teacher and then through my own inner knowing, where so much of our ancient spiritual traditions where they intersected, like what was the common denominator, you know, Jesus said this, and also how that lent itself to the teachings of Buddha, and so on and so forth. I basically walked out with this understanding of that really so much of it is saying the same thing, but it's lost or miscommunicated. And I also became deeply blessed, I have to say, blessed through the Divine Mother. That was a major connection for me. I would say that and learning how to put my attention on a feeling inside were the two greatest blessings of my life at that time, and really still are on a grand perspective. But I was learning so much, and I dived deeper and was blessed by the teachings of Mother Mira Alfassa and Sri Aurobindo, who had an ashram in Pondicherry in India, and who were helping to bring down the supramental force, which is an evolutionary consciousness force. I was experiencing that force, and I don't know how else to go into that more deeply, but that was basically like the precursor for this new earth energy is what my experience has been with. And so I basically was a student, and then I had the opportunity to teach a wellness class at a really cool private school for kids, because I still had to earn a little bit of money while I was there. And the doors just opened, and I started teaching a wellness class. I actually started off teaching like a wellness food class, because that's what I was also doing. I had like a little side business. Because I had gone through my own physical healing journey as well, post-cancer, and that's a whole nother topic as well, but had gone on like a holistic health journey as well in my early 20s and continued. So back to, I was working at the school, and I was like, you know, I can totally teach these health things with nutrition, but here's what I'm really learning that's really tremendous and life-changing. Would you like to see if your kids like it? Sure. Amazing little school. So I start teaching these practices, which I learned from my teacher, and they were essentially very streamlined, simple practices that were in line with EFT and tapping, the Sedona method, direct attention, feeling your feelings in your body, and simple meditations about how to move energy in the body through breathing, how to basically drop into your body. And that's what I was doing many hours of work on myself, and then had the opportunity to start teaching these things with kids, and it really took off. Like, they were really receptive to it, and but it was also really hard on me energetically at the time. I would work with these kids, and I would come back, and I'm not kidding, it would feel like in my body that like I had a really bad cold for like 3 days, and I had to learn how to take care of my body and protect my energy and ground myself. And I learned all these tips and tricks about how to take care of my energetic body. And so that was a whole process. And then my whole interaction with my teacher was a very And I can say this now because I'm looking back in retrospect and have a lot more clarity on this. It was a very specific karmic contract, and he had tremendous force in him. This is somebody who was doing meditative practices and connecting to grace in different traditions for hours and hours and hours a day. And I felt like the practice that he was doing was also getting downloaded into me all the time. And so over a span of 4 years, I did about 10,000 hours of inner work, meditation, feeling feelings, observing my mind, learning how to see the tricks of the mind and where we get stuck, and learning a lot of discernment in truth seeking inside. But it was a very strange situation also with my teacher. He was very, very overprotective, and I really did not have a life much outside of going to the grocery store and working in the school system. And I started creating and building this program called Healthy Minds, Healthy Bodies. And it was streamlining a lot of these practices that really weren't quote unquote spiritual in nature. They were starting to have more energy psychology background to the things that I was teaching. And some of it was just very simple meditation, which really didn't come from one tradition or another. It was just very simple stuff that I was teaching, but it was very effective with the kiddos. So here's what happened. Then I ended up going home after 4 years, and there was this dude that was living in my mom's basement. Let me rephrase. He was a young man whom was a foreign exchange student here in the US, and my mom works at a high school in the office, and he was her office aide. And I had been hearing about this kid, Eduardo, for many, many years, how awesome he was. And he ended up finishing school and living in my mom's basement for a little, almost 2 years, and knew my family and had this whole relationship with my mom, but I had never met him because I was only coming home to Ohio like once a year, maybe twice. And I met him, and we had a lovely interaction. I taught him some things. He was like wide open. He was like, this is amazing. This is so cool. I've never learned anything like this before. And oddly enough, he kept calling me. He kept asking me things, and he was wide open, like no one I had really met in a long time. And so we basically kept in touch, and we ended up spending a handful of days together at a children's mental health conference. And he helped me out there, and what I experienced was like the next level of my path, my dharma, my life unfolding. And I remember being there with him, and I remember just standing next to him, really. And I felt like our bodies were clocks spinning, and they were merging together. And I felt an outpouring of divine love just fill me and fill me and fill me and fill me. And I heard this inner voice again so clearly, another like cornerstone of intuition here. Tell me, you've learned what you've needed to learn about truth from your teacher. This man is going to show you how to really love. And I was like, oh my God. And I was, again, this like feeling of like my heart pouring out of like, and I cried to myself, and I was like, I had this overwhelming sense of gratitude. And so then my entire life with my teachers started to unravel at that point. I kept in contact with Eduardo. He experienced a massive experience as well. It wasn't the same as mine. Maybe he'll do a video on it, but But basically I was like, I think I'm supposed to marry this person. I think we're meant to have a life together. I didn't think, it was like I knew, but you know, my logical reasoning, Ashley mind, human mind was like, oh, this is bananas again. And so my life started unraveling with my teacher. It was not a good parting of ways. And I basically decided to move back to Ohio. And I had to get to a point, and Ed was so unbelievably patient and kind. And in that way, he really saved me. He held space for me. I didn't even know what that meant at that time. He really held like so much space for me to come to my own terms of like, I need to leave my teacher and this experience and the safety of it, in order to expand my life, whether this works out with this guy or not. Like, I had to really get to that point, and that took me a couple months of deep soul searching and a lot of tears and a lot of working on expectations and attachments inside. And then I moved back to Ohio, and it was really hard. It was incredibly hard. And he was still living in my mom's basement, and we ended up living together in my mom's basement. It was a really, really difficult time in the sense that I had to really grieve what I had just given up. And I didn't know how to also be a functioning member of society anymore. I had gone so insular, and I had become so overprotective of myself and my energy and my voice. And the only thing that I was really doing as a service that was external, that I was working and creating on anymore, was these Healthy Minds, Healthy Bodies kids program content. And I had really come a long, long way with it. It was like so much had happened. I had worked with teachers, with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, with the Boys and Girls Club, with private schools, with Montessori schools in California. And I had just a tremendous journey working with counselors and parents. And I also had like an online meditation teaching that I did. And I became a certified minister through the Universal Life Church, and I did yoga certification. And, you know, I had done a lot of things to explore, and then also starting, you know, the student slowly starting to become a teacher. So I really clung to that, and through months of like trying to find my way, back here in society where I'm going in and out and I have a job. I started substituting in the school system where I grew up. It was like starting back at square one. It was a brand new beginning, and I learned through my experience with my teacher, like basically I had to take the best and leave the rest. I learned a tremendous, tremendous discernment from that experience. I'm still deeply grateful to him, but I have not spoken to him since I left, and that's now 5 years ago. And and I have a best friend still in California, whom, you know, she and I were like really in it together. One of the most dearest people in my life. When we get together, it's just like the sky opens up and there's tremendous flow of grace between us, and we just sit there, and it's so beautiful. It's like a soul dance with her. It's so beautiful. So anyway, I am working in the school systems. I'm trying to navigate this relationship with my husband, because we actually got married very quickly. We went to the courthouse, and we also did a spiritual ceremony. There was no witness at the courthouse, and my mom was the only person who saw us in this spiritual ceremony that we did in my mom's backyard. it was very fast in many ways, obviously, but in other ways it felt completely right. And I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't know how hard it was going to be. I had no idea. So I'm learning how to be a human again on a day-to-day basis, back in Ohio, and dealing with myself energetically, and trying to navigate this relationship with a guy. He's 8 years younger than me, and his shit was starting to come up inside. And he didn't understand why I was having such a hard time. He thought I would just be happy because I was out of California and we could live our life together. And anyway, it was a lot of, for the first 2 years, starting from scratch again. But I got really lovely experiences being a substitute teacher in our school system and really coming to understand the public school system, which was so different than the private, the Montessori, back in California. And I ended up, talking with a couple people, a couple teachers in the teachers' lounge about, what I was doing in Healthy Minds, Healthy Bodies. People were curious, and I ended up getting the opportunity to start teaching that in small groups in different ways at the high school, at 2 elementary schools, and that was a tremendous experience. Again, in kind of streamlining the program, how do I make this accessible? And what I realized I was doing basically since the beginning of my 20s on up until 2 years ago, 3 years ago, was that I was always trying to fit myself into this very square box so that people could digest and accept where I was coming from. In LA, it was this culture like you had to be a certain way, look a certain way so that you could be castable. Okay. Let's not even go into the whole body dysmorphia that goes along with that. Again, the whole LA thing is a whole separate video. But then these tremendous feelings of like wanting to be accepted, wanting to be understood, wanting to have what I was experiencing in my heart, and this tremendous healing and this tremendous transformation taking place, wanting to translate that to people. And them being like, this is bizarre, I've never heard of this before, and a lot of resistance coming up internally, externally, so much stuff to work through. Okay, but I did have a lot of success as well working in the schools and really going deeper with counselors and teachers. It was the teachers who wanted me there and made it happen. And I am so grateful, so grateful for that experience. And then basically, I was also going through hell and back a handful of times with my husband. He, like I said, was kind of going through his own dark night of the soul. And we ended up separating and coming back together, and I got pregnant. Didn't think I could get pregnant, got pregnant. So that was a whole something new. And then something really awful happened, which I will go into in potentially more detail later on. But I had our baby and we were separated at the time that I had my baby. And also during this time, COVID hit, and all during my pregnancy, I felt this, again, it was this huge calling to go back to the drawing board, to go through all this synthesis of all the experiences that I had in our education system and come back to these programs. And 3 programs were refined and made completely digital, year-long programs. I'm talking like over 500 hours worth of content for teens, for elementary age kids, and I split that up into 2 different programs, and then also for early childhood programs. And I did so much research, I did so much inner work. I was like guided to to learn so much, and was learning so much in my own relationships with people at the time, and my husband, and then in becoming a mom in my pregnancy, I started experiencing this this connection to karma, and not just my karma, but I'm talking like karmic timelines of my husband's family, and working on the energy of that through this life that was coming through me. It was blowing my mind, absolutely blowing my mind. And I don't think I mentioned before this, ever since I had that experience at the conference with my husband, it was like I could feel his energy, like we were one. I could sometimes even hear his thoughts, and I could speak to his heart. And I knew what he was going through so much of the time, and yet there was a lot of resistance up inside, and it was a lot of internal battling and purging going on. And during my pregnancy, I was guided to learn more about twin flames, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. He's my twin flame. This is what we're going through, to the letter. And then right before I had the baby, 2 weeks before I had the baby, our daughter, our first daughter, we were separated, and it was horrible. It was devastating. I thought we would never be together again. It was so hard what we were going through. And in the night, I had a breech pregnancy, and I had to have a scheduled C-section. And the night before I went in to have the scheduled C-section, and I didn't even know if he was going to show up to the birth of our baby, because things were so precarious at that moment. I again had this cornerstone moment in my life where the divine poured this love into me and through me, and I feel it in my heart. I feel this gratitude in my heart right now as I speak it. And this voice just spoke so clearly through me. And my mom was sitting there on the couch and witnessed it and felt it to a certain degree with me. And this voice, this voice of God spoke to me and said, your husband's gonna come back to you. You're gonna have a healthy birth, and you two are going to be together, and you're going to have another child much sooner than you think, and you're going to be very happy together. And I was weeping, because at the time I thought that was insanity. I was like, what is happening here? But I took it all in, and it just washed over me and through me, and I felt this peace, this unshakable peace. I want to talk about too this unshakable peace that happened right before I left my teacher, because he thought I was ruining my life by leaving, and he was trying to create all these obstacles to try and get me to stay. Not healthy, right? Yes. And he was praying over me, and he was praying to Christ. And I felt Christ's love come to me. And I felt simultaneously at the same time Christ's love was coming to me, I felt this overriding, absolutely like diamond power energy coming to me, urging me to be like, it's okay. You have to stand on your own 2 feet. You have to do this. You have to leave. And I felt them simultaneously. And one was, it wasn't my teacher praying over me, because he was, and I felt Christ's love. But I also felt this tremendous intuition, this diamond power that was just taking me. And again, I left, and I had so much peace about it. So much, as much peace as I possibly could have had. And I felt that same peace in this moment. So I give birth to my daughter. I guess I don't give birth. I have a C-section. You can call that a form of giving birth. And in the early months, the first 3 months of her birth, my husband and I were separated. We were still communicating. He was still coming to see her. But I was living at my mom's, and this was the Christmas time of 2020. First major year of COVID, right? We've been shut down. So I had my entire pregnancy during COVID. I was no longer working in the school system. I had no income, but again, kind of like everything that I needed just appeared and supported me. I was completely held by the universe, and everything that we needed for our daughter just like came to us. It was like unreal, the support that came to me. Kind of like the same instance when I had all that money and could just sit and do my practice right in the beginning. Same feeling, okay? And I continued experiencing these kind of deeply karmic things unraveling in my body, in my consciousness, in my dream state. And it was blowing my mind, things I had never experienced before. And then I was guided to perform the earth ceremony that they were doing in Uluru, and I did it in the backyard in that December. And I am not kidding you, friends. I felt in my mother's kitchen this like this pillar, this unshakable pillar of energy that was like the new earth energy grounding itself in the earth. And she felt it too. It was like boing. It was like cartoony. It was like walking into a wall of energy. And during that time, I was purging, I was processing, I was going to new depths of like despair inside. Again, things were still so precarious and so hard, and I thought my relationship was over and I was going to be a single mom, and I was like, oh my God, all of this stuff was going on in my head and my heart. And I remember laying there at night, and I'm not kidding you, I was in the most despair that I felt ever in my heart my entire life. And I was co-sleeping with my baby. She was next to me in this little pod, safe and sound. And I was just weeping. My heart was crying out. And I'm not kidding. I felt this grace, this hand come and hold me, hold my hand. Oh God, so beautiful, so beautiful. And it was an angel. It was an angel there to comfort me. And I knew it, and I felt just like, I felt encased in the love of this angel. And then I was called to like go to this local shop, and I got this deck of cards that was to connect with angels. And I started connecting with angels, and I started experiencing the angelic realm, something I had never like forayed into in my time in Ventura. And again, something was expanded, and I could feel the support. And then with this new earth energy, I had this experience a handful of times at night. But one experience in particular, I'm not kidding, it was like my entire body and my consciousness in this dream state was being dragged through time. But like, oh my God, it was like I was a timeline. I knew what people meant when they used the term, the timeline is merging. And I was like, oh my God, I felt like this timeline was merging inside of me, and I was being uplifted, and I could feel lifetimes of my wisdom and intuition and power coming to me. And I mean power in terms of the divine power that we all have in our heart, but it was like coming towards me. And I was healing in the collective, and I was like experiencing who I was in a past life, and I was moving forward to a higher timeline now. And I was being held by the divine's grace. And it was like mind-blowing, mind-bending. And holy moly. And then I was guided to really work through a lot more of my pain inside. I started doing programs from Safiya Sundari. She has these incredible digital programs, and I did her Activated Woman program, which is all about basically like tantric energetics, like how do we bring the grace, the consciousness, to the energy in our bodies, to the density of our bodies, and how to heal our deepest energy, which at its core, at its root, is our sexual energy. And I don't mean sexual as in like bang bang sex. I mean like the creative force that is within us. And I had tremendous healing experiences, and I knew I was healing myself, and I could feel collective healing happening. I experienced it so clearly and so deeply in my body, in my cells. And yeah, and it has been that trajectory ever since. My husband and I found our way back to each other, and we moved back in with each other, now in our own apartment. So we were fully on our own. We had our little baby. It was still really rough, but we were working through a lot of stuff. And and then sure enough, 6 months to the day postpartum, I get pregnant with our second child, and we are both blissful about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. The prophecy, whatever you want to call it, that had come to me the night before I gave birth to our first daughter is like here. It's happening. And of course, that shocked the crap out of everybody in our life. But what else could they do but be supportive? And so there we went. I'm like, okay, I'm pregnant again. And the same deal with the second pregnancy. We found a house. We eventually moved out of this apartment and found our first home, and had experiences with family members and the house and jobs and pregnancy, and it was like so much all at once. It just was so unbelievably hard. Internally, externally, just continuing to work through so much crap inside and outside. It was like still a lot of purging, a lot of healing happening, going on, and learning how to integrate so many different things as a human, right? Like learning how to become a mother, learning how to manage a house, learning how to become a mother twice, going through, so many huge life things, human life things, and going through it consciously and holding space for my husband to do the same. And during this time as well, I really called out to the universe. I was like deeply yearning to have the experience of like feeling valued for who I was, and the kind of knowledge that I had accumulated. So I was no longer doing Healthy Minds, Healthy Bodies. I was completely out of working with kids. I'm talking like 8 years of my life, like deep devotion. Like I did it all in service to divine. And I sat with with all of my papers laid out right before we moved, right? Like everything I had created and all the videos and stuff were like on my computer, and all the documents. Like I really was like, I was a teacher, and I had crafted these things, and I had found so many other educators and researchers out there that were supporting this work, and included that in there. And again, it was like this massive grief that like I had done all this work, and like for what, right? And it was another huge letting go. It was another huge experience where the divine, like in my heart, came to me and was like, this was not all for naught. Like this was a huge process for you in your own evolution, and you're going to use all the stuff later on in a different capacity. Don't worry. And I just let it go, and I was like, okay. So I completely let that identity go. That was kind of like the last part of the stuff that I had directly done with my teacher, and had started there in Ventura, California. And now I was like, okay, what next? And so my heart was like deeply yearning for another experience where I would be valued for exploration of spirituality, right? Which is very different than working in the education system. Very different. Again, there'll be subsequent videos about that. But so I then was connected through a family friend with a group called Sacred Awakenings here in Toledo. Who knew? And it was this group of online spiritual exploration, and they were looking for an education director. And I applied and I got the job, which didn't really feel like a job because it was so deeply refreshing. I met the most incredible people here locally in Ohio, of all different backgrounds, and who were really on the path of consciousness, of opening their heart, of becoming better humans in any way that they knew how. And it was such a tremendous experience, and I'm so deeply grateful for that. And that lasted a couple months, and then it became very clear to me I had my second baby. I have 2 under 2, and this is really, really difficult right now. And I had this feeling like, okay, I have to step back. I have to let this go. Which really brings me up more to the present. And I have continued to do, research on my own. I'm constantly looking at what other quote unquote light workers, ascension people are doing, self-healers, people who are in the mental health field, in the fields of spirituality, in the fields of education. Like, I've been really trying to just stay on the pulse of it all, and I keep being called to just learn these different things, and things are just being shown to me organically, which is amazing. And I have never stopped doing that, and I never will stop doing that. And but I have to admit, I got really, really depleted the first 7 months with my kids, and kind of lost that sense of identity, and was again trying to fit myself into this very small contented box, like, oh, I just need to be the stay-at-home mom. I'm very blessed that my husband is supporting us, and I've been able to be a stay-at-home mom. But it was it was a steep learning curve, even though I knew how to work on myself, even though I knew how to work through, not sleeping and all of this, but because I was trying to make that everything in my life, and that I needed nothing else. And I tried that for a while, and realized after letting go of a lot of feelings about it and trying to get to a place of contentedness or more equanimity inside about being a stay-at-home parent, that I actually did achieve a lot more contentedness. And then that when that happens, then what always happens right after that, once you play the video game and you've worked through something, then poof, then something else expands and something else opens. And that's exactly what happened. And I did some more work with Sophia Sundari program, and I really, really felt held to start stepping into my own voice again. And I heard the term creator being actually, I would say 1.5 years ago. I heard it from Phil Good, who, oh my gosh, I have so much to say, so much joyful, grateful things to say about him and his gifts and the things that he shares, along with Lori Ladd. There's so many people that I want to just basically write love letters to, because they're really showing up for humanity. They're really holding space for so many people. They're really moving through so much and evolving, and holding space for others to do the same and step into themselves, and open their hearts and have tremendous compassion for themselves. And so basically this concept of creator being, that's the first time I heard it, and it really it just sent this shock wave through my body, and I was like, whoa, there's something in that. And then I started literally 3 weeks ago being like, okay, this is the next thing. This is what I'm committing to. And this is the first major video that I am creating for it, because it's an awakening story. And this is just like it's a major overview, but I feel like these are the kind of stories that I want to hear more of. These are the kind of stories that I have not ever really heard in this detail, honestly, that I'm giving, unless I've been in like a private closed room and I'm one-on-one with somebody. I know a lot of this stuff may sound nuts to people, and it really doesn't matter. Like, this is my experience. I don't have like an agenda here. Like, I'm not trying to make you believe me. Like, I'm literally just sharing this experience because we all want to feel seen. We all want to feel heard. And what's even more powerful is that we let go of our attachment to being seen and being heard. And then we're just like at peace with just being seen and heard by ourselves. And like, that's what I feel like I'm finally stepping into. I've been a chronic people pleaser my whole life, seeking validation. And through this last 10 years of just feet in the fire, out of the fire, feet in the fire, out of the fire, I'm telling you, it has been a friggin' workout the last 10 years of my life. But I have learned mountains. I've gone so deep inside and I've gone so high, and it's like as above, so below. And I'm like, let's just keep on going, baby. And I feel deep in my heart that I'm here to help bring more consciousness to the density that we all experience in this human condition. I feel like I'm here to be a connector, to help people really step into their voice so that we hear more of these awakening stories, so that we support each other in these things, and start really giving a voice to and credence to people's intuition, to credence to people's spiritual experiences, to normalizing spirituality, because spirituality isn't new age nonsense. If you're in a human body, you're having a spiritual experience. Like, there's no way around that. And so I'm here right now declaring that, like, I want to devote my life to this, and I've known it. And this is just the new direction that it's taking. And I really can't wait to hear other people's stories, testimonials, wisdom, because this is stuff that we don't learn in our school systems, guys. Like, I can't be like, oh, here's my degree from Harvard in spiritual exploration. Like, you know, or here's my certification that tells you that I'm someone you should listen to. Like, no. Like, this is just my very deep personal experience, and I'm here being open. I'm here being quote unquote vulnerable, because I feel so deeply called in my heart that this is what I have to do. Just that plain and simple. So if you want to hear things more like this, then stick around. And just know that that I'm really, really thrilled that you went through this entire video with me. And there's so much more to come. I'm just getting started. So truly divine blessings to all of you. May your awakening journey be one that you are so deeply in love with, no matter if it's easy or hard, or you feel lost, or you feel like you are on top of the world. That's the journey. It's an incredibly rich, deep dive into your own inner space, into your own humanity. And I'm here for it. So lots of love, and keep creating out there.